for a partial deal. China has been starting to buy our agricultural product, if you noticed, over the last week, and actually some very big purchases. But that's not what I'm looking for. We're looking for the big deal. We've taken it to this level. We're taking in billions and billions of dollars of tariffs. China's devalued their currency, and they're putting out a lot of money into their economy, and they have a very bad economy right now, and I don't want them to have a bad economy, but it's the worst in, they say, 57 years. 2 weeks ago it was the worst in 22 years. Now it's 57 years, and it's only going to get worse. Their supply chain is being broken up very badly, and companies are leaving because they can't pay the 25, soon to go to 30% tariff. And we have 30% very shortly on 250 billion. We have another tariff at a slightly smaller number, as you know, on about $300 billion worth of goods and products. So they would like to do something. As you know, we're talking a little bit this week, talking a lot next week, and then top people are going to be speaking the week following. But I'm not looking for a partial deal. I'm looking for a complete deal.
You feel you need that deal before the election, sir?
No, I don't think I need it before the election. I think people know that we're doing a great job. I've rebuilt the military. Scott and I were talking about that. We spent $1.5 trillion. When I came in, our military was depleted. Frankly, we didn't have ammunition, okay? But our military was in very bad shape. We've rebuilt the military. We've got one of the strongest economies. Mike Pence actually got some, who's right here, a great vice president. He was talking yesterday, and he called me. He says, "Boy, these numbers, these consumer numbers are incredible. The retail numbers that came out 2 days ago that really weren't reported were really, I mean, just incredible numbers. You know that very well. That's your world." And some other numbers. We're doing very well. Our economy is very strong. And China is being affected very badly. We're not. We're not being affected. In fact, we're taking in many billions of dollars. And China's eating that. You know, China's eating the tariffs because of the devaluation. Now, that doesn't happen with all countries. China's China. And they know what they're doing as well as anybody. My relationship with President Xi is a very amazing one, very good one. But we have right now a little spat. But I think we're doing very well. Our country is doing well. You look at so many different things. Look at all of the regulation cutting that allows us to do what we did. Look at what happens 3 days ago where you have an attack like that, and it takes out a big chunk of oil, and the price goes up $4, $5, and now it's heading down rapidly. That tells you that would have happened years ago. It would have gone up $50. It would have doubled. And this was a blip. So it's been really amazing what we've been able to do. I think the voters understand that. I don't think it has any impact on the election. Now, if something happened, I think that would probably be positive for the election, but that's okay. I do think signing USMCA on a bipartisan basis with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and everybody else, very bipartisan. I think that's very important for our country, and I would certainly be willing to say that's a bipartisan deal. But I think that's very important for our manufacturers, for our farmers, even for unions. They want that deal done. And so hopefully that's going to be put up to a vote very soon. There'll be very little cajoling of the Democrats because most Democrats want it too. But the USMCA is ready to be voted on. It's finished. Mexico has taken their final votes. Canada is willing to do that anytime we want them to. They're all set to go. And we need that for we need that for our country. It's a great deal. It's a great deal. Thank you.
There's no better time for a meeting like this on the world stage. As we gather here at the United Nations, more than 80% of the world's population live in nations where religious freedom is threatened or banned. The regime in Iran brutally persecutes Christians, Sunnis, Baha'i, and Jews. In Iraq, Iran-backed militias terrorize Christians and Yazidis were nearly wiped out by ISIS' recent campaign of genocide. The Communist Party in China has arrested Christian pastors, banned the sale of Bibles, demolished churches, and imprisoned more than 1 million Uyghurs in the Muslim population. In our hemisphere, the regime of Daniel Ortega is virtually waging war on the Catholic Church. In Nicaragua and in Venezuela, the dictator Nicolas Maduro uses anti-hate laws to prosecute clergy, even as his media cronies spread anti-Semitism by trivializing the Holocaust. Communities of faith across the wider world have also faced unspeakable acts of violence in places of worship, shocking the conscience of the world. In October, 11 Jews were murdered in the Tree of Life Synagogue massacre in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In March, a gunman killed 51 Muslims at prayer in 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. And just a month later, suicide bombers murdered more than 300 Christians during Easter services at 3 Christian churches in Sri Lanka. These attacks strike at the heart of everything free peoples hold sacred. And the threats of religious freedom and the attacks on people of faith underscore why President Trump has taken such decisive action since the very first days of our administration to build and promote our nation's proud tradition of advancing religious freedom, and that continues today. At the President's direction, the United States created the Genocide Recovery and Persecution Response Program, and we've provided more than $370 million to aid ethnic minorities and faith communities persecuted by ISIS in Iraq and throughout the region. Earlier this year, at the President's direction, the Secretary of State held the 2nd annual ministerial to advance religious freedom, inviting more than 1,000 civil society and religious leaders in 100 different nations to the largest event of its kind in the world. And last year, at the inaugural ministerial, at the President's direction, we established the International Religious Freedom Fund, which already has received nearly $5 million in pledges and given over 435 rapid response grants to those persecuted for their deeply held beliefs. And to date, this effort has helped some 2,000 victims of religious persecution around the world. As the President often says, America is a nation of faith, and we will always stand for the freedom of religion of every person, of every race and every creed, to live, to work, to worship according to the dictates of their conscience. And today, giving evidence of his passion for religious liberty, the President will announce additional steps that the United States will take to protect religious liberty and defend people of faith around the world. This is a very special day, and I always say it is a high honor to introduce this president, but to be here at this historic gathering with leaders around the world standing for our first freedom of religious liberty is among the greatest honors I've ever had. And so let me say, it is my high honor and distinct privilege to introduce to you a tireless champion of the freedom of religion and people of every faith in America and around the world, the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump.
شكرا جزيلا. شكرا، هذا جميل. أود أن أشكر أيضا مايك. اليوم هو شرف حقيقي لي بأن أكون أول رئيس للولايات المتحدة يستضيف
Pence for the outstanding job he's doing. He's been a fantastic and valuable representative of our country. Likewise, Secretary Mike Pompeo, Ambassador Kelly Craft, Secretary Ross, Secretary Mnuchin, Ambassador Sam Brownback, all for joining us today. And we have other representatives of our cabinet and the administration in the room. We've done a lot. The Johnson Amendment doesn't get spoken about enough, but I'm very proud to say that we've obliterated the Johnson Amendment within our country so that now we can listen to the people that we want to listen to, religious leaders, without recrimination against them. It's a very important thing, and I said that at the beginning, and I say it now. It's something I'm very proud of. We're also grateful that UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres could be here along with so many of his friends and my friends, world leaders. I've gotten to know a lot of them, and I would imagine you know all of them. I would imagine. If you don't, you're not doing your job. And also I want to thank my daughter Ivanka for being here. She works so hard on all of the things that are very important to the people in this room. So thank you, Ivanka, for being here. The United States is founded on the principle that our rights do not come from government, they come from God. This immortal truth is proclaimed in our Declaration of Independence and enshrined in the First Amendment to our Constitution's Bill of Rights. Our founders understood that no right is more fundamental to a peaceful, prosperous, and virtuous society than the right to follow one's religious convictions. Regrettably, the religious freedom enjoyed by American citizens is rare in the world. Approximately 80% of the world's population live in countries where religious liberty is threatened, restricted, or even banned. And when I heard that number, I said, please go back and check it because it can't possibly be correct. And sadly, it was 80%. As we speak, Jews, Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, Sikhs, Yazidis, and many other people of faith are being jailed, sanctioned, tortured, and even murdered, often at the hands of their own government, simply for expressing their deeply held religious beliefs. So hard to believe. Today, with one clear voice, the United States of America calls upon the nations of the world to end religious persecution. To stop the crimes against people of faith, release prisoners of conscience, repeal laws restricting freedom of religion and belief, protect the vulnerable, the defenseless, and the oppressed. America stands with believers in every country who ask only for the freedom to live according to the faith that is within their own hearts. As president, protecting religious freedom is one of my highest priorities, and always. Our Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, hosted the first ever ministerial to advance international religious freedom. In this year's ministerial, Secretary Pompeo announced plans to create the International Religious Freedom Alliance, an alliance of like-minded nations devoted to confronting religious persecution all around the world. I've appointed a special envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. We're standing up for almost 250 million Christians around the world who are persecuted for their faith. It is estimated that 11 Christians are killed every day for the following. I mean, just think of this, 11 Christians a day for following the teachings of Christ. Who would even think that's possible in this day and age? Who would think it's possible? With us today is Pastor Andrew Brunson, who was imprisoned in Turkey for a long period of time. Last year, my administration was thrilled to bring him back home after a very short and respectful negotiation with a very strong man, and a man who's become a friend of mine, fortunately, President Erdogan of Turkey. I called the president, I said, he's an innocent man. They've been trying to get Andrew out for a long time, previous administration. I don't think they tried too hard, unfortunately. But I want to thank President Erdogan, and I want to thank you, Pastor, for being here with us today. Where is Andrew? Is he around someplace? Thank you, Andrew. And Paula White, thank you very much. In July, I met with survivors of religious persecution at the White House, and we're honored that many of them could be here today as well. Some of these individuals suffered as a result of state-sponsored persecution others at the hands of terrorists and criminals. No matter the case, America will always be a voice for victims of religious persecution everywhere. No matter where you go, you have a place in the United States of America. Could I ask those folks to stand up, please? Please stand up. Thank you. Thank you very much. In recent times, the world has also witnessed devastating acts of violence in sacred places of worship. In 2016, an 85-year-old Catholic priest was viciously killed while celebrating Mass in Normandy, France. In the past year, the United States endured horrifying anti-Semitic attacks against Jewish Americans at synagogues in Pennsylvania and California. In March, Muslims praying with their families were sadistically murdered in New Zealand. On Easter Sunday this year, terrorists bombed Christian churches in Sri Lanka, killing hundreds of faithful worshippers. Who would believe this is even possible? These evil attacks are a wound on all humanity. We must all work together to protect communities of every faith. We're also urging every nation to increase the prosecution and punishment of crimes against religious communities. There can be no greater crime than that. This includes measures to prevent the intentional destruction of religious sites and relics. Today, the Trump administration will dedicate an additional $25 million to protect religious freedom and religious sites and relics. We're also pleased to be joined today by many of the partners from the business community as we announce a very critical initiative. The United States is forming a coalition of U.S. businesses for the protection of religious freedom. This is the first time this has been done. This initiative will encourage the private sector to protect people of all faiths in the workplace. And the private sector has brilliant leadership. That's why some of the people in this room are among the most successful men and women on earth. They know how things get done, and they know how to take care of things, and they're with us now for the first time to this extent, first time ever, and we're really honored to have you in the room. Great business leaders, great people of strength. Too often people in positions of power preach diversity well, silencing, shunning, or censoring the faithful. True tolerance means respecting the right of all people to express their deeply held religious beliefs. Before I conclude, I want to once again thank all of the survivors in the room for their courage and resilience. You're an inspiration to the world. You remind us that no force on earth is stronger than the faith of religious believers. The United States of America will forever remain at your side and the side of all of those who seek religious freedom. Today I ask all nations to join us in this urgent moral duty. We ask the governments of the world to honor the eternal right of every person to follow their conscience, live by their faith, and give glory to God. The United States has a vital role in this critical mission. Secretary General Guterres will now share a few words on the UN's efforts to promote religious liberty for all, and he has been a champion of exactly what we're in this room for. So I want to thank everybody for being here. God bless you, God bless the faithful, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.